It's like really action-packed music.
I love that. I think it's so good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I want it to be like after it finishes, you're like, I gotta go write. Like I'm pumped. You know.
I definitely feel that way, so that works great.
Like now, are you allowed to write during work? Like, are they like, what do you do? And you're like, no. I'm working on notes for the job.
Well, so it's nice if I'm not in the lab and I'm not doing any desk work, I have a lot of free time to just write. So I'll bring my computer, especially with Nano going on right now. I'm trying to write during my lunch period just so that I can at least get some of my words out there so I don't have a whole lot to do. Because most days I'll work at my lab job and then I'll either go to one of my other two jobs and then go home. So I don't have a whole lot of time at home. So if I can get a little head start on my Nano stuff here, I really try to do that.
All right. So you have 3 jobs and you're a baby author as proclaimed on the TikTok.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So we're learning a little bit about you as this is the highlight the authors of the world series that I'm basically doing on the Right Mindset YouTube channel. And you're ultimately the first guest in this list. So that's pretty exciting. You're the let's break some wine or champagne over the boat acknowledgement. So let's start there. So 3 jobs and authorship. Now, where did you feel you had the time to be like, let's, you know what, let's write.
So, I mean, I am a very avid reader, first of all. If I have the time, I will try to read as often as I can. So I know there have been years where I've read almost 200 books in a year and years where I read only 50, just kind of depends. And pre-COVID time, I was working in a different position and I was actually at 5 jobs at one point because I was psycho. And then COVID hit and I legitimately went from 5 jobs to no jobs in a day.
That's tough.
I didn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try writing this story that's been stuck in my head since I was a sophomore in high school, and just kind of started putzing along, doing what I can. And of course, the world got a little bit better post-COVID and everything opened back up. And so I had less time, but I have one complete first draft, which is very heavily still in the editing process, but there's one done. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. You know, the hardest part is starting. And the fact that not only did you start during a crisis, but you got to conclude the first draft, which, by the way, is one of many to come. And, you know, it's okay. Like, you know, keep it going. So I'm assuming you were a writer prior to having 700 jobs. It just so happened when COVID happened, you were like, wait, I can actually dedicate some time to focus write. Is that?
Not really. I've always really enjoyed reading, and then I enjoyed having the opportunity to be creative back when I was in school, and found an author, a pair of authors, they co-write, that just have the most amazing world building I've ever read in my entire life. And it just sucks you in so much that suddenly you like look up and you realize that you're not actually in this story. And before they've gotten huge, because now they've blown up on TikTok and on Instagram and all of these things. But I like randomly reached out to one of them and I was like, hey, I'm really interested in writing. Like, what advice do you have? And they responded. Like, these authors that I have admired for so long, like, responded to me. It was the craziest thing in the world. And
That's
so
awesome.
That was really just kind of the extra push to be, you know what? It's not going to happen unless you make it happen. And so I tried to carve out some time, and now I really do enjoy it. And it's something I look forward to, even if it sometimes makes me want to pull my hair out. But it's been a really wonderful creative outlet, especially in the insanity that was the pandemic. And then trying to find something that's filling my cup as well between all of the jobs that I do is writing fills that niche really well.
Yeah, it's sort of like the jobs is you giving to the world and the writing is giving back to yourself.
Yes, exactly. That's a good way to think about it.
Now, the story, as you said, has been with you for a long time. It's something you've been working on. So I'm assuming outlining must have been very easy for you because you're like, well, I already have the story. Or did you pantser it?
I am for sure a pantser. I like to pretend I have some semblance of what's going on. And I know I definitely have like scenes that I want to get to, but how I get from point A to point B, no one knows. I don't know. The characters like kind of grab hold of me and they're like, no, we're going to go this way now.
Yeah. Yeah. They're always like, look, I understand you want us to go fight these people, but did you smell those muffins?
Right, exactly. No, it's been so fun, and it really, I took a solo single creative writing class in my life and
Okay.
had a really wonderful teacher, and this is just kind of a spiral off of that from back when I was like 14 years old.
Oh, nice. Yeah. No, it's good to have somebody that really, inspires you to go, oh, writing is something that's in me. I can do it and I
Yeah.
can get these stories out. Um, Now, when you joined TikTok originally, did you join it to get involved in the authors of TikTok, or were you just a they're dancing kind of TikTok person? Like, did you have a mission when you joined TikTok?
Oh my god, I did not have a mission when I joined TikTok. It was just a way for, like, I think a lot of us, my husband and I both, we like joined TikTok during the pandemic because it was something to doom scroll on while the rest of the world was kind of up in flames around us. And
Doom
then
scroll.
inevitably, through what you like and what you interact with, I found myself on Book Talk. And I was like, this is so cool. There are people talking about these books that I love that otherwise I can't talk to people about because it's very frowned upon that you read books like this or you have interests that are like this. And so it really did just build this community, and zero intention of trying to do anything really besides like post funny videos about my life or like, this is what I'm doing. And eventually, now that I'm have a finished manuscript and I'm trying to edit it and I'm doing nano and things like that, I am trying to be more intentional about using TikTok as a
Hmm.
platform to interact with other authors, get amazing writing advice from the people that offer it very freely and very kindly. Just have that support system because this is a really hard thing to do. And sometimes I don't know if I've ever met an author that doesn't feel imposter syndrome while they're working on it. So it's nice to know that I'm not alone, and trying to just build a community that's going to be really supportive moving forward has been a lot of fun the last couple of months.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, yeah. TikTok definitely can be a positive area, like a
Yeah.
platform to be on. It could also be negative. There can be, but it's a grateful feeling to be surrounded by others that are. And it's not so much that they're commenting on your stuff, but it's like they're supporting you. They're going, "Oh,
Yes.
that's great! You got 1,500 words in, or whatever the case is."
Right.
Now you're doing the Nano for this month, and
Yes.
are you working on a brand new book, and that's where you're getting your numbers in, or is it your rewrite of the first draft into the second draft?
Completely brand new storyline. So I actually made up my own writing challenge for October
Okay.
where I utilized my Spotify liked songs playlist because I have it's ridiculous the number of songs that I have liked on Spotify that just exist in this unorganized mess of things. So once a day, I would randomly shuffle all of those songs. And the first song that would play, I would write a scene based on that song. And so sometimes it would be 100 words, sometimes it would be 1,000 words. It was just kind of whatever inspired that day.
Yeah.
And some of those pieces are going to go into my nano stuff. But as I was going through this process, I was driving home one day because do you ever really stop writing?
No.
And I texted my friend. I was like, I have this idea for a book. I'm obsessed with it. It's so good. I'm going to tell you all about it. I'm so sorry you did not sign up for this. And then just like info dumped everything that I had thought about and kind of thought about it more and more and more over October and couldn't help myself and wrote a little bit about it in October and then started fresh on the first. And now it's this brand new idea that's spiraling already because my character is like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to go over here and do this thing instead.
They want those muffins.
Or they
Uh,
do.
well, they smell good. There's blueberries. So I think that's a really great tip for writers who have writer's block is to
Mhm.
listen to music and just write whatever is inspired from it, even if you end up not using. Because as you're saying, some of it you ended up using for this, and I'm sure some of it you didn't.
Yeah.
And the idea is to just keep writing whenever you can. And like I've white page syndrome is very scary.
Oh, absolutely.
And I remember when I first started writing professionally where people were like, here's money, and I was like, oh, thanks. Like, my job wasn't to find inspiration. My job was to be inspired all the time, and it's
Oh,
exhausting looking at a
I'm
white page going.
sure.
And one of my mentors, one of their things was like, just start writing gibberish. Write your day or write anything and just delete it later, but get your brain going,
Yeah.
because once you past that threshold of you're getting paid to be a writer for someone else, your job isn't to wait for inspiration. Your job is to just be like, I gotta write. And
Right.
little things like, well, no, that's a big thing, like listening to music to get yourself creating these
Mhm.
stories, because the emotions you have to feel and
Yes.
these scenes that just come to life, or you get pumped up, you're like, oh, this is like an aggressive good song. And so for anyone listening, that's amazing advice, Casey. So
Mhm.
I'm glad that works for you. Are there other things you do to get yourself getting those words out when you're like, all right, I have 15 minutes to write, how do I get this going?
I have a notes page or app on my phone that like anytime where I can think about, because I think most authors have multiple works in progress, but especially with Nano going on, the other people or the other characters are just kind of pushed to the wayside. But anytime I have any sort of idea of like, oh, this could be really good in this storyline or this could go here, I open up my notes app and I add it into there, and it just exists in this, like, this would go to this story and this would go to this story, and then this is going to happen to this character. And I think just making sure that when an idea strikes, you have the opportunity or the ability to just jot it down, even if it doesn't 100% make sense when you go back to it, just to know that, oh, yeah, I was kind of thinking along these lines for this thing that could happen possibly. And then that I think is so inspirational too, because it has that opportunity to spark something else, even if it wasn't originally the idea. And then having the opportunity to follow people on TikTok, follow Instagram influencers or writers or authors, or even just like bookstagram things to see, you know, things that you really enjoy do. Maybe they'll have a mood board. You're like, oh, that one. I like that one. We're gonna do something with that. And know that inspiration doesn't have to come uninspired, if that makes sense. Like it can just happen from anything, from your life, from interactions, from conversations, from the fact that it was really sunny out today and I haven't seen the sun in 3 days. Like that's awesome. We should bring that into the storyline.
Yeah.
And just embracing that life is really creative too, and you can take that into your story, which is fun.
Yeah, with writers, we have this innate ability to just be walking around, and in our brain, there's dragons, or there's people running across, or we're seeing a love story unfold. You're like, oh, this is a really great like moment to write the emotional,
Mhm.
and but other people are just eating a hot dog because you're on your lunch break,
Yeah.
and then you turn to reality. You're like, oh man, let me pull out my notes. So
Yeah, no, exactly. For
yeah.
sure.
That's definitely one way to get it. And especially like you ever wake up in the middle of the night and you just grab your phone and you just jot down like, all right, stands in field, thinking about something something something, and then you
Yep.
wake up the next day, you go, what the hell is
All the time, all the time. Or I'll like nudge my husband in the middle of the night and I'll be like, remind me to do this with this person tomorrow. And he'll wake up and he'll be like, who the hell is so and so? And you're like, oh, don't worry about it. It's a character in one of my books.
yeah, our marriage is secure.
We're fine.
Yeah, that is the difficult part, because like our significant others have to deal with that one special aspect of us, which is, I have to tell you something.
You have to know right now, because if I don't talk about it, that money is going to exist in my head for 18 million years. Ugh.
Yeah, because we have to work it out some way. Because in our head, we're like, here it is. But if I speak it out, maybe I can kind of clean it up, and
Well,
like,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Working your way through all the nuances of different things and try to figure out, well, if I actually want this to happen, this has to happen first, type of thing.
yeah. Which brings us to another great point about being a writer. That moment when something's not working and we're struggling with it, and then like you just wake up, or you're sitting down and just like drinking coffee or whatever, and then everything comes together to make sense of that moment, and now you get to use this moment that you've been dreaming about, that was basically didn't make sense
Mhm.
originally, and you're like, I have it. It's I need there's the carrot. I found the carrot. I'm following the carrot. What in your most recent works, that first draft, do you have
Mhm.
a moment where you were like, this is such a great moment in my heart, but it's not working for the book?
Mhm.
What was the solution in your mind? Like, when did you have that moment where you're like, the book came together?
So, oh my gosh. So, one of my jobs is I coach for a local university springboard diving. And so, unfortunately, fortunately, it depends on who you ask. My athletes are very aware of the fact that I am a writer or that I'm trying to be a writer. And I'm like, I will talk to them about them. I was like, what? And they're like, oh, but like, can we read it? And I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. That seems scary. But it was really lovely because I would give them a paragraph or two of something. I was like, does this make sense? How do you see this in your head? Because like, this is such an integral of the story. I'm like, I need to make it written. You can picture the way I have as well. And that was hugely helpful. And we would like talk about it, practice in between dives and what was going on. They're like, well, what if you did this? And what if this happened next? And, or like a song would play and I'd be like, oh, this is what happens at this point in the story. And so they were super supportive. Or just having, I tried to keep a notebook where any idea too that I would write down that was specific. So I have a notebook per storyline that I'm trying to figure out because I'm very tactile. I like to write things down versus just typing them on my phone or on a computer.
Yeah.
And then you can like suddenly see it in front of you. You're like, oh, wait, this actually connects to whatever happened over here. And this has to happen to make this storyline happen. And I think just having multiple ways to view the information is really helpful too, because just because one person is like, oh, I'm a plotter, it has to go from point A to point B to point C. And if it doesn't, it's wrong. Versus a pantser who's just like, screw it. Something's going to happen at some point. I think understanding that most authors are actually a little bit of both.
Yep.
And being okay with that and knowing that even though it works for someone that you really admire, someone that you look up to, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. And that's okay. But I think ultimately the best piece of writing advice I have ever been given is you don't have to write linearly, which is like has blown my mind. Yeah. Because of course you'll suddenly get this idea for this scene. You're like, oh, but that scene's not going to happen for like 8 chapters. So I got to wait. And then of course, finally you get there. You're like, wait, how did I want this to go again? So if you write the scene that exists in that moment, and then you'll figure out how to get there eventually. And I think that's been fundamentally changing my writing, because then I'm not stressed of having to follow the arc. I can create the different pieces and the arc will build itself, is what I have found at least.
Yeah, it's almost like you're dropping ink on the table and it's coming out and it's just connecting to different elements and corners of the table. It'll make its way there. It'll get there. It looks beautiful. It's art. Example, you know. When I first began, I was definitely a pantser. I was just like, story. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, let's go this way. Let's do this. And my first quote unquote real paying gig was for a script, and they were like, all right, before you write the script, can you work on the outline and send it to me so I can okay? And I was like, a what? I go, the outline is the script.
Yeah, I don't know what you want from me.
Yeah. They're like, no, I need an out. I was like, all right. And I was very like biased about it because I'm like, no, it comes from my gut and I have to, you know. And now I can't write anything without an outline, because the outline to me is the zero draft. So I use it in a different way than just like outline, like this is the plot. I use it where I'm loosely bullet pointing the story out, creating dialogue whenever it comes to me, but it might not be the end be all end all dialogue. But and I was like, maybe I could get both worlds. I'll do the outline, but I'll also write it sort of so it's my zero draft, which allows me discovery. I love the discovery element where you're like, where are these characters going? And but I do the main plot points where it's just like, this has to happen, and I use the 27 beat plot point outline structure, which isn't necessarily the traditional where they say, oh, act 1, act 2, act 3. Act 1 has to be 25%, act 3 has to be 25%, act 2 has to be 50%. And it's like, no, you got to hit these beats, and as long as you're hitting these beats, your story is going to make sense. But you know, like you're saying, you know, we're a little bit of both, and it's important because I think when you let yourself go and not live to the standards of whatever, like, well, this is how it's done, I think you limit the creative journey.
For sure.
You know, like you have to follow where your brain is taking you, your heart is taking you. Even if you're like, I'm an outliner, but then you're like, well, where's Jacob going? let me see where that's happening. Oh,
he's going for the muffins. He'll be back later.
It's like, if Melissa's gonna eat the muffins, I'm gonna go over there, and she's an excellent storyteller. I need to hear the conversation. So you're on your first draft of your first book. Technically, you're on your second book with the Nano.
Yes.
All right. Now, are you a you know how I don't know, you do a lot of the writers I hang out with and stuff like that. They're always like, if I come up with one little story, I now have to write a trilogy or I have to write a series because, but it's like an isolated story. But like, no, I can make a series out of this. Does that happen to you? Like your first book, did you write that and think, could I make a series out of this, or are you happy if it's a one and done?
I am fully intending that most of what I write will be a standalone novel. If for whatever reason the storyline becomes this 2,000 word epic, I'm like, ooh, that's long even for some of my favorite authors that are established. And then I can cut it down, or I can figure out where there's a natural break in the storyline. Then it'll turn into more things. When I first started with my first draft, I was like, okay, I'm just going to get everything that I can think about on the page, and then I will make a decision if it's a one off or if it's a duet or if it's a trilogy, like whatever. Well, it's going to be a duet now. I know that. I'm fully aware of that. But I just wanted to see where it goes. And I think I can't even imagine intentionally setting out to write a series. That is so unwieldy to me. There is so many different pieces, and you have to foreshadow this, and you have to figure out what's going on here, and you have to leave just enough breadcrumbs so that book 3 makes sense compared to book 1. Like that seems so overwhelming to me that maybe one day I will get there, but I don't feel that I'm there right now. And then I think about authors that I admire that have 9-book series, and I sit there going, I don't know how. I don't understand. It doesn't, like, their brains work in such a different way, and it is such a, like, there's such artistry, I think, in writing
Mm-hmm.
series because you have to weave things so intentionally. And I very truthfully don't think that you can start a series and start book 1 until you know how book whatever ends. Like, you have to have at least some semblance of an arc before you can even undertake a series for it to be cohesive and to make sense. So I don't think I know I'm not there yet. Maybe one day, but oh gosh, not right now.
You're 1,000% correct. You know, it's like, and I'll work with clients where they'll have one or two books that are supposed to be in a series, and they're like, "Can you help me with this third book?" And they come up with all these great ideas for the third book, and you're like, "But all this happened in the first and second book. How is this?" Like, you have to acknowledge.
Right.
And they're like, "Yeah, but the third book, I'll make sense of it. I'll like retrograde." And you're like, you're cheating your audience.
Yeah,
You're
for sure.
like, it's the Dallas Dream sequence where I just gave away my age, where Bobby wakes up and he's like, are you shower? Oh, no, not he doesn't wake up. His wife wakes up and he's showering. He's like, "Hey, good morning," and she's like, "Huh?" you know, and you're like, "You got me." The whole season was fake. Like, you can't do that to your audience. So you're right.
No.
You gotta plan it out, and that's like when I work on my outlines, quote unquote. Uh, I I'll dib dab all the things that I need to happen in book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I say, "Oh, this is an interesting." Like for the discovery element where like a moment happens, you're like, this would be
Yeah,
interesting to work on, but it has nothing to do with this story. So I can see this, and maybe I could explore it in book 2, 3, or 4. But
right.
at least it's here. Like the foundation of it
Yeah.
is in this little moment. And I did that the other day with a character, which, by the way, all the time, like when I'm working on the discovery, I'm just like guard name or woman. Like there's no name because like I'm just like, oh, let me just let them meet somebody.
FMC, MMC, all of that sort of
Yeah,
stuff. We're using right
MMC one,
now.
yeah, MMC one, FFC, FC
Yep.
one. I do that all. The running joke is every character's named Richard, men
Yep.
and women, and I just go back and I have to change the names. But yeah. So I was working and I came up with this character and I was just like, whatever. I want this introduction, this interaction. I want, and then the character turned into like they're actually deeply involved in something that had to do with the underworld, like but they were also good people and they were like a spy, to try to stop the underworld, which, by the way, has nothing to do with the story I'm writing. It's just this backstory started creating. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait, maybe it's the brother of this other person because this person stated that like there's
Right.
the city folk and then there's us country folk and we're not good people, but maybe they're brothers and they said, like they went that way. And I was like, all right, I just, I'm not, I need to focus on the story at hand and I'm creating this whole world for it, but it ended up like it's adding nice little natural nuances.
Well, but see, I think that's so special and so unique because if there are, I know I'm guilty of it sometimes, and other baby authors that I am friends with on whatever platform, they're like, oh, but if it like deviates from what I'm thinking, I can't do it. I'm like, no, but like you can, because if it doesn't work in this story, maybe it'll work in a different one, or it's this amazing side character that everyone thinks is awesome and that they love. And I think one thing that a lot of us, especially at the beginning, are very guilty of is it has to stay in this box. And if it's
Oh
not
yeah.
in this box, it's not right. And how can you ever say something that's artistic and creative is not right? And you like look back at yourself, you're like, oh wow, I was an idiot for thinking that. And like now I'm much more comfortable, and I'm like, oh, it'll happen, or I'll like maybe I'll keep it. Or a good piece of advice is you don't ever delete anything, you just copy and paste it out into something else, so that if you don't know, you might use it later for a completely different storyline, but at least you have some semblance of words and ideas in
Yeah.
one spot.
Yeah, I'll do that, but I'll just save it even if I end up changing the whole thing. But that feel of that moment is
Mm-hmm.
like I'm like this is a good feel, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to keep that. And that's a very smart trick to do, especially for authors that are listening. Is if even if you change it, like let's say you write a scene and then you're like I want to work and change a scene, save that original scene
Yeah.
and put it somewhere else in another file, like Casey's saying. And because yes, you're changing the scene to work for your story now, but that
Mm-hmm.
original scene might help inspire you or lead to something else in the future. And the other thing, to the credit of uh spanning off with characters that have nothing to do with the stories, it's okay to do that, because like you were just saying, baby authors fall into that, like, well, I'm not allowed to. And it's like, yes, you are,
Mm-hmm.
because even if you don't use information you create, it helps you as a writer understand the voice and the theme and the promises of your book. It gives you that fuel because you're like, it's so rich and explored
Yeah.
that now you can simplify it
Mm-hmm. Oh
and it
gosh, yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. What was one of the things that were told to you, sort of like advice, but like that you kind of pushed off? You're like, yeah, okay, but then it hit you one day, and you're like, that's some of the best advice I was ever told, and I don't know why I ignored it when it was first told to me.
Oh my god, I mean so much. I mean, I very truthfully was like, I'm going to be a reader. That's who I am. That was the little bubble I would put myself in, and then never realize, because my people that because you would be like, oh, well, what if this character did this? Or like the world of fan fiction, I think is looked upon in not a good light, which is sad, because fan fiction is just a different style or genre of writing,
Yeah.
which is fabulous. And of course, high school, middle school age Casey was like, I'm going to write all the fan fiction because it's so fun. And being ashamed of that and having people be like, oh, you do that type of thing. So I stopped and I didn't pick up or do any sort of creative writing in that vein or at all for a long, long time. And then someone was just like, well, why not? I was like, oh, I don't have an answer for that. And it was nice to be able to go back. And I think finally having someone give me permission, even though I was the one that had not given myself permission, was enough of a brain switch or like a split. And I was like, oh, it's like actually okay. I can do this. This is a good thing. This is something that I enjoy doing. This is something that fills my cup and brings me joy. And who cares if it's in a weird genre or if it's something that's not stereotypical, because it's something that I enjoy. And if I like it, maybe someone else will, and we can share this together. And I don't know. I think being able to live unashamedly within whatever realm you find yourself as a writer without feeling like you need to put these pressures on. Or I know there's a big thing going around there. They're like, oh, well, you don't have X, Y, and Z thing, so I don't know if it's actually going to work out, which is ridiculous. Why would you ever put a damper on someone's creativity when they could be the next whomever,
Yeah.
And I think that advice took way too long for it to like finally click in my brain. But I was like, oh, wait, yeah, I can do this. This is an okay thing for me to do and to love and to enjoy and to share. I think sharing it's the scariest part, if I'm completely honest with you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just been a really cool experience. And then to have my friends that are alpha reading for me, for example, or having the opportunity to alpha read for other authors and to be like, well, wait, what about this? And genuinely having a conversation that potentially shifts the frame of the scene or how the trajectory of the novel is going has been a wonderfully amazing experience, which has been really cool.
Especially when like multiple alpha readers tell you different emotional perspectives of the scene. You're like, wow, wasn't aware that was there, because I was trying to say this, but I actually kind of like, I might want to lean into that. That's fantastic, because us as writers shouldn't limit the experience of our readers. However, there is a good lesson in sometimes you got to trust yourself. And I'm in stand-up comedy, and comics are always like, you got to have everyone in the room laugh. You're like, no, I need my audience to laugh.
Right.
Because no one goes to see Dennis Miller unless they're Dennis Miller fans who like political humor, but he had to start in a room that didn't have all people who like political humor. And there was something you said that I wanted to touch base on with you were saying, so the fan fiction, like to gatekeep the concept of like, well, fan fiction isn't real writing or whatever the case may be. It's like fan fiction is, and I would like to say that it's the same as artists, amazing artists that started in comic books that began tracing the original characters that weren't theirs, to drawing the characters that weren't theirs, to finding their own voice through that experience.
Gotcha.
And the same goes with scripts. Like in the movie and television business, the one thing I learned right off the bat, which, by the way, working with people that are starting out in the industry 20 something years ago, the thing I always heard the most 20 years ago was write original works. And it's like, well, I want to make money as a writer. The original stuff is me trying to be a producer, trying to be this or whatever. And spec work, which is basically fan fiction, is writing episodes going, how would you write this episode in the voice of the show, which is technically not your original voice. Like you're mimicking or taking something that exists, and that's how you get into that world. So what you were doing, even unconsciously, was taking on the trade of the masters, like learning through. Did you ever see that movie, Finding Forrester? Sean Connery's in it. It's an old movie, like in the 90s or whatever. In that movie, Sean Connery's character is like a real famous author who like wrote one book that basically became huge, and then the fame kind of scared him, so he like retreated back, but he still wrote all these books. He just never released them, whatever. But he ends up mentoring this child, this high school kid. So I'm 44, so everyone's a child. But so he's like 19 or whatever. I don't know. But there's one point where he goes, I don't know what to write, and Kevin Costner, Sean Connery's character goes, here, write this paragraph, and he opens up one of his books, and he goes, oh, but that's yours. He goes, just write the first paragraph, and then whatever you feel beyond the first paragraph, just write that. And he ended up creating his own story with the essence of that first paragraph. And when he handed it in the next day to his school, right, because for class, the teacher was like, I know this first paragraph from something. And so the kid was getting in trouble for plagiarism. But like the literal author gave him the right. He was like, no, use my friend. But that's a great example of what fan fiction is. It's taking something and then finding your truth through their words. And anyone to say no about that, to stop you, that's just evil.
I know. And like looking back on it, I wish I could just like shake 13, 15-year-old me and be like, what are you doing? You like this. You're having fun with it. Why would you let someone else's opinion, which matters zero in the long run, stop you from doing something you enjoy and that brings you joy? And I'm mad a little bit that it took me so long to get over the fear of just writing or being inspired by other things. And then eventually I was like, you know what? This is okay. And now I am in such like a mentally happier place, and I get to write and do all these crazy things and interact with all of these amazing writers as well. And man, I wish I had this community like 10 years ago. That would have been great.
And TikTok, I don't even think exists. I think it was called Musical.ly or something like that, right? Or something, right?
Back in the day.
Back in my day. I remember we had to turn knobs just to get the TV to go on.
And it made the noise when it turned on. Yep.
My dad told me once I only had children to change the channel because he'd sit on the couch and be like, "Go change the channel." And you got to use the like wrench,
Yep. Just the right one. Adjust the antenna on the ears for a little bit.
Have you had to play the antenna where you just stand there for 30 minutes?
Oh yeah, for sure.
See, we know the struggle, okay?
They'll never understand. I can't just click a button and say, Siri, find me Netflix.
I know, right? Wi-Fi.
They'll never know.
We became adults at 13.
I had to get up from the couch to go to the TV to turn it on or off or change the volume or the channel. Oh, so
that's why our generation have good legs, because we were always using them.
Right? Absolutely.
Look at the calves on this one. Yeah, well, it's from walking from here to there.
All the time. And you had to stand on your tiptoes to reach the TV. Oh, yeah.
Yep, we had good arms because we had to lift the TVs, which weighed 3,000 pounds.
They were so heavy.
So heavy. I think it was the transistors in them, right? Or something like that. It was like there was one element of that TV that just made it death-defyingly too heavy.
I don't know. I just remember having to move it at all. I would like stare at it and be like, do I really need to move this right now? Does it need, like, can it live in the middle of my hallway?
It's like, you know what? I think I would rather move the couch to make the TV look right, Because
it was easier to move the couch.
It's totally easy. Because the TV you need like 3 people. The couch is like you just move a little here, a little there, Like,
perfect. Sold.
See, there we go. Writing. We just wrote our childhood on a podcast. All right, so let's find a way to close this out because I know you still have to eat some yums for lunch. Now, moving forward, okay, in your career, what is something that you would define as successful for you as a writer?
I mean, honestly, as simple as being able to have something that I feel comfortable and confident enough to be able to be like, you know what? I can publish this, even if it's just an electronic copies that people can download, or if I have like 10 paper copies and I'm just like, my friends were like, hey, I want to read it. And I'll sign it quick, give it to my friend, be like, hey, victory, someone's liking it. And just having someone be like, you know what? I read it. I connected with it. I liked it. That would be huge. And I think that's what all authors want. But I think I'm terrified to have someone read my story. Like, don't know if I can put that into words of how scary that like concept is in my brain. But that would be a really cool moment to have someone outside of my family, outside of my friends, be like, you know what? This is awesome. It's cool enough that I'm going to talk about it, or I'm going to leave a review, or I'm going to recommend it to a friend. That would be a really cool thing.
Yeah. And, like having your parents or friends or a loved one read it, you're like, they love me. So they're like, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, they have to like it.
Yeah, they have to but you're still like, thanks, But then getting somebody that you don't know, because then it's like, what are they going to say? And I just for the record, though, excellent definition of success for yourself. But even if you never let anyone else read your stuff, if you never publish your stuff, remember, you're still an author because you write, that you have something that you're creating, and you're on your second book. So technically, you're definitely an author, because a writer writes and an author has a collection of, So yeah, so that the fear of having to publish it is not really necessarily there, but you are still an author, and you should be proud of that. And obviously continue to write as much or whenever you can. But that's great, and I hope that happens. I hope someone's like, hey, sign this, and you're like, yeah. Now, are you gonna sign it like someone else's name as a joke? Just like George Washington.
Well, so that's the thing too. Trying to decide, because I have friends that publish under pseudonyms and friends that publish under their name. And I have friends that do both. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And I'm also really terrified of someone that I don't know super well to be like, oh, I found your book online. Like, this is gonna. The one thing I have working in my favor, though, is Casey Jones. I swear is the most common name in the world. I think I'm going to be fine. So they
look okay. It's basically John Smith for ladies, right?
Oh, gotcha. Well, And it's always fun because they're like, oh, so are you the railroad conductor, the Grateful Dead song, or the hockey player from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? I'm like, yes, all of them. I am all of them.
It depends what day it is, but really, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a little
it
bit of
just,
both. Do you know that Anne Rice started out writing with a pseudonym?
I did not know that.
Yeah, she. If I could be wrong on this, but I'm using just my memory, which we all know is fallible. She wrote basically. I didn't want people to judge me
Mhm.
or like I was nervous, but as her books started doing well, she went back and changed those books to Anne. Like she changed her name to Anne Rice and gave it to those. And then there's another thing. I think if I remember correctly, she wrote spicy books
Mhm.
and I think she went back to using her pseudonym for the spicy books. I could be wrong on that, but it gets all mixed up because I know when she became a born again Christian, she
Mhm.
changed things again, and then when she left, she was like, "Forget that." She went back to like she did a couple of things that was interesting. And also I believe her sister wrote books too. Under some, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just it comes down to what do you want to brand yourself as.
I
Like
know. Like that, I think is so hard too. And it's like going back to talking about like, what do I use TikTok for? I don't know. I post funny things. I talk about writing primarily, but am I going to talk about the fact that at home I have 200 pounds of dog, or I do these really crazy things at the bar or at the pool, or like, yeah, I'll talk about that too. Like, I don't know. And it's everyone's like, you have to find your algorithm. And I'm like, do I really though? Like, I'll find the people that I'm meant to find, and we'll just go from there.
well, what did I say? Niche first, like niche down first, and then spread. And
Yeah.
basically, you go, I'm gonna do this thing, and
Mhm.
then once that starts getting popular, then I can add like another element, and then
Yeah.
once I continue to build it, then I can add a third element. As long as I like connect it or whatever. I have like 4 or 5 different YouTube channels because like I'm like I don't want me like the me as the entertainer to be influencing the writing thing because the writing is the right. But at the same time, on my entertainer thing, there was a short period where I was like, "Here's some helpful videos on how to be successful in the industry," and then I was like, "Wait, I have my production company, so I'll just do it on air," like. So it is a struggle, and but it's good once you find the truth
Mhm.
in your voice. And
Yeah.
like you're saying, I am the person who goes out and has fun at a bar. I'm the one who has a 200-pound dog. I'm the one like this is my journey as a baby author, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. So, that is your truth and there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe your niche down is just that you're being you. Like this is the
Mhm.
world of you and
Yeah.
wherever that comes. So that's beautiful, that you're doing that. Uh, have you talked to anyone about maybe having a pseudonym? Because Casey Jones is a great name, like you're saying. It's very
It's I love my name. Don't get me wrong. I do. I have books with spice. I do not have spicy books. There are differences.
yes.
I do not want my mother to read my book, or my grandmother for that instance. Which like that sounds terrifying to me. Oh my gosh, I can just like I cannot tell you if my mom being like, I'd be like, don't read chapter like 7 or 10 or 13. Like
The worst is if grandma's like, "Is this move even possible?"
oh my gosh,
She's like, "I'm
no.
gonna die."
Oh my gosh, no. So the grandma I have left is English. She's way too posh and
Oh,
proud to
okay.
be like,
Okay.
tell me more about this. No, oh gosh.
Position 77. What is this?
She would just be like, you need some more tea, sweetie. And I'd be like, yeah, yes, grandma, thank you.
Have you met Jesus?
Only sometimes. I don't know. But
Yeah,
I mean,
he's in chapter 12.
yeah, no, exactly, right? But oh gosh, and see, that's like the one hesitancy that I would have about it. But beyond that, I don't know. Because I am proud of the fact that I have written a book. Like this is it's rough, don't get me wrong. The editing process stresses me out, so very little has happened on that front. But
Mhm.
it's still 95,000 words of a story. Like that blows my mind. How can I not be excited about it? And then of
Yeah.
course someone's like, "Oh, tell me about it." You're like, "I know nothing. I can't explain my book to you. I don't even know how to explain my and like trying to figure out what the blurb would be. I don't know. It's to me, it's so far down the line of when it'll happen or if it'll happen that I don't know, but right now everything I do write is under my name on my computer, and so we'll see if that stays or changes or what's happening out there. I don't know.
You could call yourself MacGuffin.
There you go.
It's a writing term, the MacGuffin, like where it's like, it's just gets people to create action. So you're like, written by the MacGuffin. Oh my God, that's actually kind of funny.
You just need a MacGuffin muffin store that all of the characters
Oh
go
my
to.
God. The MacGuffin muffin store. That please tell me that's going to be in your next book. Is like, welcome to the MacGuffin muffin store.
There's
right?
a very high likelihood that it's going to be in my Nano now. So if you don't, I need to write this down because there's a character that 100% would be like, oh, hold on, I need to go to the muffin. I need to get muffins.
Where are you going? The MacGuffin muffin. Imagine that actually creates the inciting incident is going into the MacGuffin muffin. And it's there that their ordinary world changes, and they're like,
this is where I was supposed to be.
Yeah, oh, this worked out. What are the chances?
Shocking. Don't worry, I'll get the blueberry muffin and then I'll go on this adventure with you. Thanks, wizard.
Thanks. It's like Chekhov's gun and the MacGuffin muffin all in one, where they walk in and they go, what's that on the wall? This amulet? Nothing.
It's always been there. It glows sometimes when people come in the store. We don't know why.
We have no other. It's not glowing because of orcs. That's already been used. I just put that out there.
Yeah, not orcs.
No orcs. They're evil now, I hear. You're not allowed to use orcs.
Well, that's so sad.
I know, right? They had excellent arms, good handshakes.
I know. What more could you want, really?
That's funny. All right, so let's do this. Let's close out the show. Is there a way that do you have a website or a social media? I'm going to put the stuff inside the description of the video and obviously the audio on Spotify and everything. But if you want to verbally say, "Hey, you can find me," here's your chance.
I mean, sure. Because of how I need to look up what my username is. That's where I'm at in my life right now. So, clearly I'm very good at this whole marketing thing.
No judgment. No judgment. We don't judge here. The right mindset, don't judge.
Oh gosh, I know. I'm thankful for that. It's like, honestly, your videos have been so wonderful and just being like, if you're stuck, it's okay. If you have an idea, it's okay. If you are you just give authors, regardless of where they are in their journey, such freedom to exist, which has been, well, seriously, it's like, it's so wonderful to be like, oh, and every time your video pops up, I'm like, oh, what am I going to learn today? But yeah,
I appreciate that. That's very nice.
Well, it's so true though. But if they're wanting more writing stuff, the only thing that I post a lot of writing is on my TikTok. So that's at CaseyMay_13_. So,
okay. Well, there you go. All right, and we're gonna let you go because you have the lunch to eat.
I do before I have to go back into the clean room. So
yeah, so I'm gonna say my goodbyes now, and then I'll end. And then we'll do a write off. So Casey Jones, for those listening, is a self-proclaimed baby author, but I look at her as an author. And I'm proud of her for continuing to do her journey and to get her words out on the paper. 90,000 plus words. It started with one idea, turned into one word, one sentence, one paragraph, one chapter, one book. And I'm very proud of you. And I can't wait to be one of the luckies that can see the final product or even a portion of it. I'd love to read your book. I'm sure it'd be an amazing experience. So until then, remember, everyone, continue developing the right mindsets. Bye.
Bye, guys.